What are the top 10 best battles of the Beyblade Metal series? This is a great question because the series is filled with so many amazing ones. So before we jump right into the rankings, I'm going to lay out the criteria I used to put this list together. These are just the main things I had in mind while judging these battles and creating this top 10 list. For starters, we have the battle itself. Was it close? Does the battle have two bladers who are relatively the same level? Was I on the edge of my seat watching it? Those are some of the questions we're going to be asking ourselves while judging these battles in terms of entertainment. The next point I considered was the visuals. This isn't going to hold that much weight, but it's still going to be considered. The main question for visuals is going to be, how did the battle look? A lot of times this is decided by the avatars or the special moves, and believe it or not, the better they look, the better the battle is. But along with that, we have the location. Where did the battle take place? We could have an amazing battle in an ordinary stadium, or we could have a head-on clash while running through the Great Wall of China. So location and overall visuals are going to be used to make this list as well. So right now we have entertainment and visuals. So now let's move on to the third way I decided to judge these battles. We have the stakes. How important was the match? Is this just a friendly battle between two friends at the B pit, or is it a battle between humanity's final hope and the god of destruction? Needless to say, stakes can definitely enhance a battle. An example of this is Zio vs Masamune. On face value, we have a good match, but it's made even better because 1, it's in the World Championship Finals, but 2, if Zio lost, Toby would have died. So those crazy high stakes just make the battle even more entertaining. But anyways, moving on, we have our fourth and final point of criteria, and that is the narrative. And this can kind of overlap with the stakes, because the stakes can be the narrative in some battles, but there's so much more to it. Instead of just having two strong bladers face off, the narrative would be two eternal rivals having yet another clash on the largest stage possible at the World Championships. To put it simply, narrative is basically the story between the two bladers in the match. So we now have our 4 points of criteria: entertainment, visuals, stakes, and narrative. So without further ado, let's just jump in. Coming in at number 10, we have Subasa versus Ryuga in Season 1. In terms of entertainment, this battle delivered. We all knew Ryuga was probably going to win, but Subasa gave him a serious run for his money. The main thing I liked here was Subasa's strategy and how he was actually the first one to defeat the dark move. Well, kind of, I guess. He still lost to the dark move, draining his power, but he was able to withstand that initial clash. That moment when the dark move met Eagle's counter stance and Subasa won the exchange was crazy. No one had ever been able to withstand that move before. I mean, just look at everyone's reaction. This was a huge moment, and then Ryuga comes back and ends it in brutal fashion. The visuals were solid, the purple on purple was pretty nice, and we also got some of the better Ryuga shots from Season 1 in this match. And the shots of Subasa's power being drained were also very good as well. As for the stakes, they were somewhat high. I mean, we saw what just happened to Hikaru, but it's also not like a final battle or anything like that. But then we have the narrative. Subasa used to be in the Dark Nebula, and he pretty much got kicked out by Ryuga that night. I mean, he got stomped in their first match, but he used it to develop a new strategy. There's some history between them, and it made for a great match. So now, coming in at number 9, we actually have another match involving Subasa. It's Subasa and Yu versus Wales and Sophie. In terms of pure entertainment, I don't think it's as good as the previous battle, but it makes up for that elsewhere. Moving on, the visuals were solid. I mean, whenever you have Libra in a battle, there's always potential for solid visuals with the sand and the Inferno Blast. Also, Grand Decalion looks really good with the two whales and the big wave. The stakes were pretty high. World Championship A block final, and you're down 1-0, back against the wall. But where this battle really shines is the narrative. This is the conclusion for Subasa's Dark Power arc, something that's plagued him for the entire tournament. He was finally able to close the door on that nasty chapter of his life, and he did it pretty much on his own. He took Ryuga's advice, and he finally beat back the Dark Power. An amazing moment not only for Subasa, but for the entire series. You could argue this battle shouldn't have made the list, but I love the Dark Subasa storyline. I feel like one of them had to be there. I mean, these battles were always brutal, very entertaining. Moving on to number 8, though, we're going back to Metal Fusion with Jinga versus Phoenix. I really wanted to put this one higher, but there's just too many amazing battles in this show. But anyways, I'm talking about their first match. I like it a bit more than the second one. I thought it was very entertaining. I really liked seeing Phoenix create actual flames. I mean, that's unlike anything we'd ever seen at that point. On top of that, the visuals here were amazing. I mean, you have Phoenix, who's one of the best designed characters in the show. You have the bright flames he created with the metal performance tip. And then you had Phoenix's actual avatar, which is one of the coolest in the series. Also, the setting of a construction site, for some reason, really worked here. The stakes were pretty high. Jinga had to win to get his pointer back. And then the narrative was really solid as well. Phoenix called Jinga out for his lack of seriousness in battle, and once he won, he crushed his pointer. This was a huge hurdle for Jinga's character. He had to start all over again from square one. I mean, overall, this was just a fantastic match. But now, coming in at number 7, we're gonna jump back to Metal Masters, and we have Kyoya versus Damian. The Kyoya fan in me really wanted to put this one higher. I mean, it definitely has all the makings of a top 5 battle. I mean, in terms of entertainment, this one was great. Lots of special moves. It was very back and forth. Just overall a very competitive match. Then we have the visuals, which were amazing. Whenever you have Damian, the visuals are always going to be very good. I mean, you got Hades' Drive, the Gate to Hades, the Guard Dog with the chains, and then you have the Realm of Hades itself. And whenever Damian takes the match into Hades, he can summon a bunch of flames and fire, which makes for some amazing visuals. And then we also had Kyoya take the battle to the African savannah, which was a very nice contrast to Hades. But moving on, the stakes were reasonably high. I mean, if Damian won, he would have been able to help Faust, and who knows what could have happened there. Also, the stakes were high for Kyoya specifically, because if he lost to Damian, he'd probably feel like he's fallen behind Jinga again, even though this is the strongest version of Damian. But moving on, we essentially had a battle of pure earned hard work versus this new method of artificial power. Kyoya basically showed Damian that no matter how many arrangements he got, hard work and real training will always be able to prevail and eclipse him. So yeah, we had two bladers who were basically the same level duke it out for 20 minutes. What more can you ask for? But moving on to number 6, we're staying in Metal Masters. We have Ryuga versus Jack. In terms of entertainment, this one has it all. Ryuga let Jack have all the fun he wanted before finally turning the tables at the very end. The visuals were pretty good. The dragon and peacock, it was a cool matchup. And then you always have Jack making some sort of creation in the stadium. The stakes were high, down 1-0 in the finals, and you need a win. But the narrative is even better. Ryuga had a bit of a rough past with the Starbreaker guys, and he was personally promised a match with Jack. So it was nice to see him get a bit of payback, and he kind of just walked on to Team Gang Galaxy in the finals, which when you think about it is just insane. But yeah, overall this match was just so iconic. Ryuga just embarrassed him on the biggest stage possible. But moving on, we've now broken into the top 5 with Damian versus Julian coming in at number 5. This one has everything you need in terms of entertainment. I mean, the sheer lengths that Damian went to just to embarrass Julian, I mean, it's unreal. Bro casually 3v1 to top 5 team in the world, and then the visuals were on point as well. Julian's main avatar and Medusa are both very well designed, and like we mentioned earlier, Damian's special moves always make for some amazing visuals. The stakes were also high. Both teams were going all out to make it to the finals. But then we have the narrative. My goodness, was this one deep. All Julian ever knew in his life was victory. The guy was just a winner, and that's what made it so interesting to see him get thoroughly embarrassed like this. His pride as a blader and as the prince of the Konzern family was crushed by Damian, and this battle also did an amazing job of introducing Damian as a villain. Dude just soloed the team who beat Jinga, Masamune, and you all by himself. And then you have the iconic ending where it all sets in for Julian, and he admits to being weak. What a crazy matchup. Now, moving on to number 4, we have Jinga versus Ryuga, the final battle. A little basic maybe, but I feel like you just have to include it. We got 2 episodes straight of a back and forth battle at the highest level we'd seen up to that point. We had amazing visuals, the dark power scenes are always good, and then they eventually took the battle into outer space. The stakes were pretty much as high as they could get. It was kind of implied that Jinga was the final piece of the puzzle for Ryuga to absorb, and then he'd become seemingly unstoppable. So Jinga had to win. But then we have the narrative. I don't even think I need to explain the bad blood these two have for each other, but it makes the matchup so much better. And then when Jinga finally realizes that he had to put his own feelings of anger aside to help save Ryuga, who at the end of the day was another blader just like everyone else. I mean, this matchup is always a classic. There's so much history behind it. I mean, how could it not be? We've now entered the top 3 best battles of the Metal series, with Ryuga versus Rago coming in 3rd. It was nice to see Ryuga finally struggle against someone. I mean, this dude went on a generational run through Metal Fury, pretty much only struggling against King. And it was also really cool to see just one person challenge the God of Destruction all on his own. Because, I mean, we saw Nemesis toss around multiple legendary bladers at once, so the fact that Ryuga even showed up for a 1v1 is crazy. Props to him. And he actually did pretty well. Now, at no point did it really look like he had a chance to win, but it was still fun to watch Ryuga take his stand and not back down. The visuals with the ultimate move, the Armageddon, and Ryuga's dragon versus Rago's dragon made for some amazing shots. And then the stakes were pretty high as well. I mean, during the battle, Ryuga said he'd crush anyone who disrespects the Dragon Emperor, even if it cost him his life. And then the narrative was just beautiful. We had Doji return to kind of instigate things. We had Ryuga, the world's strongest blader, having to come to terms with getting cooked. Even so, he never gave in and gave one final push that Rago would remember for a while. And then after that, we have the scene of a defeated Ryuga, a man who's tried everything to defend his title. He's put it all on the line, but he just has nothing left to give. He didn't try to dodge. He didn't try to meet the attack. He just accepted his fate, which is very meaningful coming from Ryuga. This battle's a pretty sad one for a lot of people, but it still belongs in the top 3. Moving on to number 2, though, we have Kyoya versus Ryuga. This one's a fan favorite. I really don't have to say too much. This is just two bladers trying to destroy each other for 22 minutes straight. It's as entertaining as it can get. The visuals are A1. I mean, you got the lion versus dragon, more dark power scenes, and the stakes are pretty high too. Kyoya's pretty much fighting to keep his soul. And then the narrative is a man going from a weak leader of the face hunters to a true blader taking on a seemingly impossible opponent to get even with his rival. It's amazing how much Kyoya grew, and he did an amazing job. People argue that he would have won had the dark power not taken Ryuga over, and I agree. He still had a new special move up his sleeve. But yeah, this is a lot of people's number 1 choice, and I completely understand. You just can't go wrong with this one. I just personally think the one above it is just a little bit better. But before I tell you my number 1 choice, I'm gonna give you a few honorable mentions. Phoenix versus Doji was competitive with amazing visuals. Kenta vs. Reggie was an amazing underdog story. Kenta battled with Yu's spirit, which was really nice. Kyoya vs. Aguma showed us Kyoya's determination. I really liked the narrative there. Masamune vs. Zio had a very detailed backstory with huge stakes. I'd probably put this one number 11. And then we have Masamune versus Chris and King. These are two very entertaining matches. And then Julian vs. Desert Blaze had some great visuals while introducing Julian as a massive threat. And then Jinga vs. Rago has the highest stakes out of any matchup in the whole series. I could honestly keep going. There's so many amazing battles in this series, but I'm going to call it here, and we're going to get into our number 1 pick. My pick for the best battle in the entire Metal series has to be Kyoya versus Jinga in the World Championships. This matchup has it all. This is where they introduced press conferences, which we've never seen before, and we never saw again. I mean, you know the matchup is going to be crazy when there's a press conference. It just added so much hype. But yeah, this match was as entertaining as they get. Very back and forth, so many special moves, and the two bladers are quite literally equals. This version of Jinga and this version of Kyoya is the definition of equal. The tornadoes always make for some great visuals, and the stakes were sky high. 1, we're in the World Championships, but 2, it's so personal for both of them. I mean, earlier in the season, Kyoya tried out and made Team Japan just to tell Jinga straight to his face that he was basically just flexing. He didn't want to join Jinga, he wanted to defeat Jinga on the biggest stage possible. So he made his own team just to match up against Jinga. This is crazy work from Kyoya, but I'm all for it. It makes their matchup so much better. In my opinion, you just can't really beat the Kyoya-Jinga matchup, and this is where it peaked. Like, I'm serious, their rivalry peaked here. But anyways, that's my list. Now, you probably disagree with me, and that's fine. There were so many amazing ones to pick from. This is just my 10. So let me know your list in the comments. This video was a bit longer than usual, so thank you if you made it all the way to the end. I'm really curious to hear your lists. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.